Hey, what's up guys? Gonna be doing a deck profile on the Guardian DreadScythe deck that I've been playing for a few days. And it's a little fun deck that you can play because I'm sure if any of you guys have bought the Dragons of Legend set, a bunch of these are just sitting in your card boxes and you're not using the Reaper Scythe at all. But it's actually not too bad of a card, and you can one-shot people like crazy sometimes, especially against decks like Lightsworns or Dragon Rulers. Decks that get a bunch of monsters to the graveyard relatively fast, you can actually punish them and kind of one-shot them sometimes, and you get this card up to absurd amounts of attack. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump right into the deck profile, then explain the choices as we go along. So first off, we have Big Daddy Black Luster Sword. This card is fantastic. It goes in every deck, but especially in this deck because it works relatively well, because getting rid of your own cards in the graveyard to special summon Guardian Yados is also a benefit in this deck. So next up, we got 3 Guardian DreadScythe, the heart and soul of the deck. Now, he can only be special summoned technically by 2 ways. By his own effect, which means whenever this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can actually special summon him. Or if Guardian Yados is destroyed, then you can special summon him. But there's actually kind of another way to special summon him, and that is using Inzektor Exit Beetle, because he gets to equip a card from the graveyard, and this is considered still on the field to the graveyard, so therefore you can activate his effect and get him back on the field to kind of keep him back, and have that reoccurring card on board is always nice. But boosting this card up to absurd amounts of attack is basically what you want to do in the deck. Next up, we have triple Guardian Yados. Basically, it's required in order to play Guardian DreadScythe, so there you go. Next up, we have 2 Dark Dust Spirits. This is just a fantastic card that your opponent can't really do anything against, because either whether they torrential you or compulse you, you're going to be blowing up the field. I love this card so much. It's basically, I don't know if you want to consider it a Dark Hole. It's basically Dark Hole, but you get to keep himself. So I think that is really good in that aspect. I really wish he was a Dark, though. Then I might even try throwing in Dark Harm or something like that in here. But he's just level 6, and that's why I really like him in this deck. And he's searchable, so I think 2 is sufficient, but he's a fantastic card. Next up, there's 3 Yamato Nakami, and he's a spirit that lets you special summon himself as long as you just banish another spirit. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but for the most part, he's just a level 6 that is also a beater that also keeps your graveyard count low, and that's kind of what you want to do in this deck. Next up, we have 2 Fenghua. This is a card basically that it's kind of like a Feather Duster, I would say, because it destroys all set and trap spell and trap cards your opponent controls. And that's pretty good, because that means you can set a bunch of your cards in the back row, and then your opponent will be like, oh, he's not going to Black Rose Dragon or, Heavy Storm or something like, well, Heavy Storm is banned in the TCG. But even if you're playing against the OCG, they're not going to think you're going to Heavy Storm if you set like 3 or 4 cards. Then you go for the Fenghua, and then you go ahead and wreck everything, and they're like, what the heck, who plays that card? And it just comes out of nowhere, and I love just playing 2 of them. You could drop it down to 1, but for the most part, I like to get out this card much safer, because once you go for your Fenghua play, you can go for Guardian Yados, and then heck, even if Guardian Yados dies, you can actually make other things. Plus, it's also level 6, so that is definitely also nice. Next up, I play a random tech Photon Thrasher, but I love this card. It helps out so much making some rank 4s, because, this card is, well, no, this card right here, number 101, is one of the best, rank 4s. Also, this card's pretty good, but I really think that this card is basically the star player of the XYZs, of the genericness in the game right now. This card is just way too good. But he's just there, and he's also just another light. And sometimes, bad hands happen, and he just kind of puts presence on board if you happen to get negated by, like, a Solemn Warning or something like that. Next up, there's 6 spirits that I'm playing in here that basically can float themselves into more cards. Aratama over here, as well as Nikotama. So this one over here, when it's normal summon or flipped face up, which means you can set this card, you get to return it to your hand during the end phase. But when this card is normal summoned or flipped face up, you can add 1 spirit monster from your deck to your hand. I mean, you could definitely drop the Fenghua, but I just love the surprise factor, and people get super salty when you drop this card on them. But for the most part, it searches out this, so it lets you go for Exit Beetle, or, you can just kind of make something to force your opponent to actually use their card. Something like Photon Strike Bouncer or something like Gauntlet Launcher will usually force your opponent to, use their resources, because these cards, can wreck some stuff sometimes, especially Photon Strike Bouncer. But for the most part, you're going to be making Exit Beetle if you already happen to have this card in the graveyard. Next up, the Nikotama. Basically, he's just used for rank 4s, but what you can do, you can normal summon him, and then you can go ahead and normal summon a spirit an additional time that turn. So that usually involves Dark Dust Spirit. And then what's cool with this is this card has the effect when this card is sent to the graveyard, you get to draw 1 card, as long as you happen to have a spirit monster. And that will work with Dark Dust Spirit. It doesn't like miss the timing or anything like that, which is actually quite nice. in the game. So I like this card a lot because basically what you want to do, guys, is you want to normal summon this card and let it return during your hand during the end phase. Don't worry that you'll leave your board blank because hopefully you'll be able to not die. I threw Maxis and Veilers in there to kind of help out with that. I know it puts cards in the graveyard, which can technically stop you from going for E-autos anyways, but there's other cards which we'll talk about a little bit later. But for the most part, I really like having 3 and 3. These cards basically just keep yourself alive, as well as it makes it so your opponent, if they overcommit and they don't finish you off, they're going to get punished for it. Next up, I played 3 Maxi and 3 Veiler because if you really want to, you can drop the traps, but the way I see it is once you get out this card, 101 hurts, and that's really about it. That's why I was like, I have to play 3 Veiler. And I was like, well, 3 Veiler, I can go ahead and play BLS in the deck because this card is also light. If you want to, go ahead and drop the Maxis completely because, Maxi is not necessarily a card where you can actually really benefit from it in the graveyard, other than DreadScythe, which technically means you already have to have gone for an E-autos. Anyways, but for the most part, sometimes in this deck you'll also have too many cards in your hand. You'll notice that with Aratama, or you can normal summon this, then go for this, and it's completely pointless. But you can go ahead and summon this, and then go ahead and add a card. And if you want to, you can XYZ, you can do whatever you want to do. And you can go ahead and like dump a Yados into the graveyard, then you can call the Haunted it, and then once it gets destroyed, you can go ahead and go for your DreadScythe through that. But I really like Maxi just because sometimes against certain decks, you're just able to add a bunch of cards, and then from there you can just punish your opponent from there, and you can kind of just win from there. Basically just involves Exit Beetle and just getting back this card, and then doing the shenanigans that you do with recurring cards in the game. Next up, play 2 Duality, 3 Mystical Space Typhoon, and 3 the Monarch Storm 4. This card is just, it's way too good in the game. This is a card that I really love with Feng Hua, and that's why I'm playing 2 Feng Hua over here. And this card basically gets rid of anything, and it doesn't tribute, so like, it doesn't target. Is what I say. Of course it tributes. It doesn't target, which makes this card super fantastic. And what I really love with this card is if you get rid of a problematic monster, let's say if your opponent has like a Thunder King or something, and they set a bunch of back row, and you go, okay, let me tribute your Thunder King, go for this, and pop all your back row. At that point, it's game over. This card basically, well, this card gets rid of the one monster already, and then this gets rid of all the back row. So you basically, like, you blow up everything your opponent has, and then you're like, okay, attack you for 21. Okay, it returns to my hand during the end phase. And then at that point, your opponent is top decking, and they're going to have a bad time. Next up, I played 2 DreadScythe. You could play 3 if you really wanted to, but I feel like it's most effective when you're able to just get it out with DreadScythe effect. And you only really need it like once, pretty much. And if you draw it, hey, it's not the end of the world because you just obviously equip it, and pretty much from there, you're good to go. It's just you got to add DreadScythe to your hand. You got to have that Guardian Yados. Originally, when I was building this deck, I was thinking Hazy Flames was an option for the deck, but I think the Spirits work much better in the deck. You can also try Conquer D if you want. Heck, you can drop Maxis, add in some traps if you want to. But the way I like to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Simply because of the fire and ice hands. Sometimes I just don't like to put things as back row because then the ice hand has a thing to pop, and then it becomes a problem because so many decks right now in Yu-Gi-Oh! Just detect the two fire hands and 2 ice hands, and this just helps out a little bit more, especially if they want to, start crashing. You can just be like, oh no, or you can start crashing and you can get rid of their monsters. Although Guardian DreadScythe would be kind of sad. I mean, get him back, that's not too bad. Being able to just get him back if, let's say, he gets destroyed by a card effect. But I do know Fire and Ice Hand can mess things up as far as timing goes. But let's see what else is there to mention in the deck. Call of the Haunted's pretty good. I mean, you can't get any of the spirits, just keep that in mind. All the spirits you can't special summon, which is kind of interesting because most of them get their effect when they're normal summoned anyways. I don't understand why. Perhaps it's just because they have no spirits, they have no souls, you can't bring them back from the grave. I think that was the logic behind the spirit archetype. But for the most part, Call of the Haunted is basically just used for this. There's really nothing else that you'd Call of the Haunted in the deck. I mean, very rarely will you need to do this, but you can Call of the Haunted for effect Veiler, and then you can banish one for the Yamato no Kami, and then you go for Black Horse Dragon. That's basically why it's there. Same thing with Catastrophe. I mean, just level 4. Well, you'd have to special summon Effect Veiler, and then you'd have to normal summon the Spirit, because you can't special summon spirits, but that's pretty much it. As far as the extra deck goes, make sure you put in a Gauntlet Launcher, make sure you put a Photon Strike Balancer, because that'll bait some stuff out. Definitely play 2 101s, I do definitely recommend that. And also definitely play Lavalval Chain. This card is really good in the deck because it lets you just send in Yados to the graveyard. Or DreadScythe if you happen to have the play to go for Exit Beetle, so that's also another option. But yeah, it's just a fun little deck that I wanted to mess around with because I like playing unconventional things and things that are like okay that we already have that we've pulled from our booster packs but just never really used. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and if you have any suggestions for this deck, I would love to hear them. But like I said, if you really wanted to, you could definitely drop the Maxis in the deck because they really don't do too much. If you want to, you can maybe bump up your Dark count, play some Chaos Sorcerers. That way you can still keep your monster count low for your Guardian Autos. But in another sense, if you get a bunch of monsters to the graveyard anyways, you can technically boost up DreadScythe even harder. So I mean, you can weigh up both options and decide what you want to do from there. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention is you can actually normal summon this by tributing 2 monsters. One easy play would be something like Special Summon Photon Thrasher, then activate Monarch Storm and go from that. So if you want to completely play the deck in a different playstyle, hey, go ahead and try it and then let me know how it goes in the comment section below. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and have some fun playing with Guardian DreadScythe. Azneyeswhitedragon signing out.